flip that on its head, I guess, what would cause a customer to move business away from a certain provider?
Technology is one. There's the new meeting technologies. Some of it is some of those offerings that I discussed. The value adds. If these meeting planners, they're trying to get attendees. They, companies like American Heart Association, all these other companies or these associations, they gain revenue by getting a higher amount of attendees, and so the event has to have value. It has to look sleek and high tech and all that kind of stuff. And so if the audiovisual provider is not cutting edge, doesn't know how, isn't providing you solutions that work with the individual's new technology and all that kind of stuff, they're going to start looking elsewhere. Obviously, if they're not getting, the service, the events are not set up in time for the executives to rehearse their program, if there's issues, cost overruns, that kind of stuff, then they'll go out and search. Now, as a matter of course, they're gonna go out for get an RFP and send it out every few years anyway. They
got it, just to stay competitive or just
exactly
keep a check on the market.
Yep. Whoever procurement or whoever is going to purchase is going to ask them to make sure they do that.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. The other big question we had, and this is stepping back a little bit onto the industry. It looks like you had gone through sort of two pretty big downturns during your time at PSAV. Could you talk a little bit about what you saw in that period and what happens to the industry and how to deal with it?
Yeah. So certainly you see a drop off, and you see a drop off. I'd hate to assign a number to it, and it depends, again, on what the purpose of the meeting is, et cetera. But, I think you could, at some points it's 15 to 20% in certain times. At the peak of the last economic downturn. So people are still going to have face-to-face meetings. There's some elective meetings that, smaller meetings that they'll put off or they'll do via Skype or go to meeting or whatever, or they'll try to consolidate them into quarterly or whatever standing meetings they had. But for the most part, what they'll do is they'll still have the meetings, but they'll try to reduce their budget elsewhere. And the thing about audiovisual is that, like I said, the reason for the meeting is you're conveying some sort of message, and that message needs to be heard and, viewed and retained, and the audiovisual is the way that takes place. So what you'll see is a meeting planner might, in an economic downturn, have a smaller budget, but they might decide to put their attendees up in 3-star hotels versus 4-star hotels, or have the banquet chicken as opposed to the filet mignon. But they'll still need to have, the microphones, the cameras so that they can see them, and that kind of stuff. They might cut back a little bit on some of the, glitz and glams, lights, and that kind of aesthetic stuff. But for the most part, the meetings take place. The audiovisual is still needed, and you just move your labor. Maybe you keep core audiovisual employees. You don't use as much contract labor. You don't subrent as much gear, and you kind of center it, shrink the outside, the monies that are going to outside providers.
Got it. So if you had to quantify, roughly the drop-off you